All right, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Zoe, are you really going to be responding to a children's cartoon? You bet your ass I'm going to. And I just got to say, I already recorded this video once, and only once I got to the very end of it did I realize that for some reason, my recording just randomly, like, stopped like 2.5 minutes into it. So I'm pretty fucking pissed. And it's like, all right, let's just do this like total fire and brimstone. Because the first time I was trying to be more polite, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be like as high energy, but I'm so mad now that I'm like ready to just fucking go. So please, if you haven't already, click the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. If you're new here, I make content regarding LGBT issues. I go over atheist content, reviewing like different religious garbage. And this video in particularly is a video by a channel named Share Faith Kids. And yes, they make cartoons targeting children to indoctrinate them, similar to the, I don't know if you ever read those little short books that were like about Jonah and the whale, but it's supposed to be more of a cutesy story to be like, you should obey God and then God will be good to you, as opposed to like, he's going to smite your ass if you don't listen to him, as more of like the Bible like actually really tells you. Anyway, I got tired of hearing all these motherfuckers talk about LGBT people trying to like indoctrinate children and that there's some type of like secret trans agenda going around. So instead, I figured let's look at actual Christian propaganda that's made targeting children. And this shit, before you say like, Zoe, this is like absolutely ridiculous. All right, it has 190,000 views. And they have 95,000 subscribers. So people are absolutely showing this type of garbage to their children. I don't want to hear shit about like, oh, well, this is just a children's cartoon. You're taking it too seriously. No, this is the type of stuff that they actually use as tools of indoctrination. So let's look at this shit and let's rip it to pieces. And yes, I'm going to manually be using my mouse to click the stupid play button and pause button in the corner. Because for some reason, whenever I hit the space bar, periodically, it's canceling my Streamlabs. So, that's fucked.
After hanging in agony on the cross for hours, Jesus cried.
Well, that's pretty fucking grim.
Out, "It is finished," and he surrendered his spirit to God.
Then he surrendered his spirit to God. Yeah, Jesus surrendered his spirit to himself. That makes sense.
Despite his sadness, Joseph of Arimathea, a man who was secretly a disciple of Jesus, knew that to ensure Jesus had a proper burial, he had to do it before the quickly approaching Sabbath.
You know, the fact that I have to watch this shit twice because my stream got, like, fucked? Maybe there is a God, and this is just my punishment. Watch this shit forever. This is like my groundhog hell is watching children's fucking Christian cartoons.
Grief-stricken, Joseph went before Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, to ask if he could remove Jesus' body from the cross. After Pilate gave him permission, he and Nicodemus went to the cross with a large amount of myrrh and aloes to anoint Jesus' body for burial. Together, Joseph and Nicodemus.
That's still, it's still funny. It's like Mummy Christ. I'm sorry. I know it's supposed to be all like graven and stuff like that. It almost looks like he's wearing like a backward like trucker cap here. You know what I'm saying? Like, do y'all see that? Is that just my imagination? God.
Nicodemus carefully wrapped Jesus' body in strips of linen with burial spices in accordance with Jewish tradition. Near the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden where a tomb had been cut out of the rock.
All right, so let's get serious for a second. So this is an important part of the like Christian mythos here. And that's that they believe that Jesus was buried in this garden, in this tomb. And then, of course, empty fucking tomb, big surprise. It's like, oh, like he resurrects and he like, you know, magics his way out of there. Now, I just want to point out here that it's interesting that there's very different accounts of the story inside of the Bible. But we're going to get to that in just a second. So for the crucial part here, fucking garden. There's a stupid mausoleum here that he's going to be stuffed into. I know they just say it's a tomb. It's really more like a mausoleum. That's why they're about to clarify that there's no other bodies in here except for Jesus, because they want to make sure that it's not like somebody did like a sleight of hand trick and they're like, oh, they took the wrong mummy.
Something only wealthy people could afford. This tomb belonged to Joseph.
Oh yeah, and this is something only wealthy people can afford because Jesus really cared about wealthy people. Like he didn't just go around the Bible the entire time talking about like sell all your shit and give it to the poor, and you should help people that are in poverty or and all that sort of thing, and chasing money lenders out of the temple with like a fucking cat of nine tails. Yeah, he didn't do any of that shit. He absolutely wanted this. But you know what the truth of the matter is that this is conservative propaganda, and conservatives absolutely can't help themselves but ride the dick of the rich. They have to. And they're like, oh, they want to make sure that this is the burial site of like a king. Remember, he may have like walked around and lived in like complete fucking poverty while he performed his parlor tricks and miracles, but Jesus was put in a fucking king's burial chamber.
And no one had yet been laid to rest there. It was in this tomb that Joseph and Nicodemus laid the body of Jesus. Before they left, they rolled an enormous stone in front of the tomb's entrance, sealing it shut.
Who the fuck cares? Why is this a point? Like, why is this a part of their stupid fucking story anyway? I don't get this shit. Like, oh, there's a heavy stone that was like placed in front of it. And it's like, so what? If there's only a couple of them that went there, if there's only like 2 or 3 guys that went there to put his body in there, and it's like, well, you come back and like all of a sudden the stone's been moved. Who gives a shit? As if like other people couldn't come along and roll that fucking stone away and get his body. Like they didn't have exactly like, the most high-tech forensics back then. Like, let's fucking go look for, footprints in the piles of horse shit around this tomb to see if anybody may have snuck back in the night to push it aside. And isn't there supposed to be a fucking Roman soldier here? That's added later.
Before the sun had risen on Sunday morning, Mary Magdalene gathered the spices and perfumes she had prepared to complete the burial.
No, you don't get to just say that because, like, go to the Bible. There are several different accounts. Only one of them includes, like, her going there, by herself with the little spices and shit like that. They also say that there were other women that went there with her. Then they also say, like, some of the apostles went and got there before the women showed up. It's so weird that, this is, like, a literalist truth. Like, this actually happened. It's not a fucking story. It's not made up at all. And yet, there's all these different accounts about what happened. And this is not a minor thing of, like, we all arrived kind of at the same time and we're not too sure. No, the story sets it up so that she's absolutely there by herself first. Then she goes to tell the others. And then the other story, they get there first before she gets there. And they start investigating this stuff. It's the most absolute bullshit lack of continuity of any fucking story that I've ever read. And I grew up reading comics.
Burial customs for Jesus and made her way to the tomb. When she arrived, she discovered the giant stone had been rolled away, and the tomb was empty. Deeply distressed by what she had seen.
Yeah, I would be distressed too if, like, my leader that I had was killed as, like, a dissident against the state. And then, like, it's like, oh, well, what did you guys do with his body? And like, oh, we went and, like, chunked his ass inside of a tomb and, like, rolled a stone in front of it. I'm like, well, did you leave any guards? And they're like, no. I don't get why there are Roman guards in one of the other, like, stories. Like, why the fuck would they guard his tomb? They're like, oh, they don't want the apostles to come and steal the body. And it's like, okay, why? Because were they planning on doing something with it? Because it's like, you already crucified and hung him around so he could be mocked or whatever. If you're going to dismember him and shit, they already would have done it. We know this from historical figures like William Wallace. When the state really wants to say, fuck you, they don't go and put you inside of a tomb for a little while. Oh, God. Is my thing crashing again? What is going on? Catch up? There, hold on. If there was a long pause or something there for a second, that's because my Streamlabs almost froze again. Maybe, you know what? It is like every time I start blaspheming, like, my shit crashes. I don't know. Let's try this again. Like, there was no fucking body in there. There was no fucking Christ. God is not real. Hey, look, it stayed up this time. Thank you, Satan. Hail, Satan. All right, let's keep going with this horseshit.
She ran as fast as she could to tell the disciples Peter and John what had happened. They've taken our Lord's body, and we don't know where, Mary exclaimed. After hearing Mary's account, Peter and John sprinted to the tomb. John arrived first, but he did not enter the tomb.
Yeah, because you never know if that woman was just going to lie to you. It's like, they took his body. He's like, no, I must go see it for myself. It's like, it's an empty fucking tomb. What are you going to see? Like, Do you got like a little kit? Are you gonna walk around and look for like Jesus thief clues? Like if they're not right around in the immediate area, I don't know what the fuck else you're going to do. Why not go look around the tomb? Why not go look up the fucking mountain? Why not go check somewhere else? Why are you going to just check right there? Unless it's like, this is fucking stupid.
Without hesitation, Peter walked into the tomb and noticed that the strips of linen that Jesus had been wrapped up in were laying empty in a pile, and the burial cloth that was placed over his head and face was neatly folded next to them. As John entered the empty tomb, he didn't fully understand.
Now you gotta admit, it would be pretty fucking funny if he had resurrected, but he was all wound up with bandages and shit, so he couldn't get up. He's like, and he's just jerking around there, and he like starves to death because no one knows to go. No one knows to go looking for him. Then like 3 days later, he resurrects. And he's like, and he's just sitting there like endlessly fucking resurrecting and dying. What if there are other religious figures out there that have like magic powers and shit that resurrect and come back, but we don't know because they've been buried and they're endlessly like resuscitating in a fucking underground, and they just die again. They resurrect again. They die again. How fucking morbid.
What had happened, but he believed that Jesus had risen from the dead. Puzzled by what they had seen, Peter...
Why? Why would that be your most like, the body's missing, somebody stole it. And then I look over and I'm just like, no, he must have resurrected and walked off. It's like, what? Why would that be your first thought? Instead of saying like, oh, well, clearly someone stole the corpse. Or like we have like, you know, body snatchers, or like the government took it to dismember it, whatever else. He's like, nope, clearly he resurrected. It's like, what? Why is that the first thing that you jump to? Like it's totally fucking irrational. It makes no, I'm not convinced. Makes no fucking sense. If you were working at a morgue and like some people came down there and like put a body next to you, and then you went to like get a sandwich or something, then you came back and it was gone, you would be like, oh shit, like there's a zombie running around here. You know, it's like, you feel like, all right, well, like who came down here, like move, like why would they move that body?
Peter and John returned to their homes. Too upset to return home with Peter and John.
Yeah, but in the other story, the men tell her to leave. They're like, why are you here? Like, fuck off. But of course, they're not going to like include that in the children's
Mary
stuff.
Magdalene remained at the empty tomb. As she wept, she looked up through her tears into the tomb, and she...
Oh, suddenly there was like two fucking bald guys, like the flash of light. It's like, hey, what if they're the body snatchers? It's like, oh, it's totally cool that I'm in here by myself. And then all of a sudden there's like this like giant light, and it's like, oh, look, there's two guys over here. I also find it kind of interesting that like in other portions of the Bible, whenever like angels come and shit like that, it's always like, oh, they're heavenly and like avert your gaze and stuff like that. But it's just like, these guys are just like, hey, what's up? We're just hanging out. Like, don't have a mission for you. We're not coming to tell you anything. Just hanging out.
She saw two angels in dazzling white robes. They were sitting where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and one at the foot. Seeing Mary's tears, the angels asked,
well, like, was she there when they carried him? And she's like, I know that was where his like ass cheek was. And his head was over here and his foot. Like, why is that? What are they trying to symbolize? That one's sitting at the head and one is sitting at the foot. Like, there's so much like illusions here. Like, there's so much like allegory that's being told. It's like this, like, I don't understand how anyone could read this book and not see that it's just a fucking story. Like, you got so much that they were sitting at the head and sitting at the foot. Why are you trying to symbolize something? Just there's two fucking angels sitting there like, hey, yo, and they say what they're going to say. Like, I don't look around, like in real life, whenever I'm interacting with people, I don't like listen for like every single thing that they say. I'll be like, oh, what allegory are you trying to tell me now? Is there like, did the phraseology that you're using, are you trying to like tell me something? Are you trying to insinuate something? Unless somebody comes and say, hey, I got to tell you something. And they want to tell you a secret or whatever. Instead, like when you just look around, you're like, oh, that's clearly like where his head was at. That the angel is like putting his ass where Jesus' head was. That's kind of blasphemous.
Woman, why are you crying? Still sobbing, Mary replied, they have taken my Lord away, and I don't know.
I guess she just got like unlucky and got the two most dumb fuck angels in the whole book. It's like we're sitting right where Jesus resurrected at, and we came here to poof to like, communicate or something. And then I'm gonna be like, woman, why are you crying? It's like, because she, by all accounts, like loved Christ. And you're like, oh yeah, we're in his tomb, and you're here weeping in his tomb. Surely you can't be grieving that somebody may have stolen his body or whatever. Woman, why are you crying? As if like they would have no idea of who she was. I guess angels don't have divine knowledge or something. What assholes.
Know where they have put him. As Mary turned away from the angels to make her way home, she saw a man had been standing behind her. But this was no ordinary man. It was Jesus. Somehow Mary did not recognize Jesus.
Somehow Mary did not recognize Jesus. She just like, it's been less than like a day or two, like a couple days since he fucking died, like 3 days. And then so I'm guessing she didn't know where his body was put when they put him in the tomb. So she wouldn't have known that the angel had his ass where Jesus' head was, because clearly she didn't see him get put in there. Otherwise, like, oh, I don't even recognize you. Like, what? It doesn't make any fucking sense. This is like, okay, this is no more impressive than Gandalf dying and coming back, and then the whole, like, I'm Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. And they're like, no, you're the same dude. You're just wearing, like, white robes instead of gray robes. And it's like, oh, he's unrecognizable. You'd be like, is he disfigured? And it's like, no, it's still him. She just, conveniently for the narration's sake, she doesn't recognize him. All right.
She thought he was the gardener. Jesus asked Mary.
She thought he was a gardener. There's like racism, like all the way back, like this like ancient Near East time. It's like, oh no. She thought you were Jesus, not not Jesus. What an ass.
Why are you crying? Who are you looking for? Mary.
Now Jesus apparently doesn't recognize her either. Like, who are you and why are you here? Like, what the fuck? Is he God or is he not? Does he not have like divine knowledge, divine revelation? Does he not like know everything and all this kind of shit? Why the fuck is he acting so confused about like who she is, and she doesn't recognize him, and it's like he doesn't recognize her? It's like, oh, this is ridiculous. It's like the whole idea is like, oh, you're resurrected. It's like, oh, you're back, and you're going to come here, and you're going to like, communicate what we're supposed to do, and tell your followers and create the church, whatever. It's like, nope, none of that shit. Just like, I'm unrecognizable. I don't recognize you. I don't know anybody. Like, this is like the most weak ass miracle ever.
Still thinking he was the gardener, begged him, if
Still
you have
thinking he's the
taken him
gardener.
away, please tell me where so I can get him. Then Jesus called Mary's name, and suddenly she recognized.
Yeah, he's like, she's like, if you took his body, can you tell me like where you took? He's like, well, after he looked so like terrifying and gruesome up on that fucking cross that I actually like, put him out in my field on some stakes, and he's the scarecrow right now, the scare Christ.
Recognized that the man was Jesus. She exclaimed, "Teacher," and fell to her knees to worship at his feet. Jesus told Mary to go tell the disciples.
Not like, where have you been? I thought you were dead. What the fuck happened? Instead, she's just like, oh, teacher, and then falls to her knees to worship at his feet. Like, no questions about where he came from, no questions about where he's been, no questions about like how they pulled it off or anything like that. Instead, it's just like, oh, clearly I need to just start worshiping. Like, y'all might need to get the fuck out there before like the Roman officials like see that he's alive and come crucify all your fucking asses.
After hearing Mary's report of what happened at the tomb and that she had seen Jesus, the disciples gathered together behind locked doors, afraid of what the Jewish leaders might do to them. Suddenly, Jesus...
Why the Jewish... Like, this is so weird. This, like, anti-Semitism slipping out here. It's like they hid behind doors, scared of what the Jewish leaders would do. It's like, well, Christ, Jesus was Jew, right? And presumably all these the Christians that first started out were all former Jews. So I don't get like why it's like, oh, the Jewish leaders, yeah, because the Pharisees had him crucified or whatever. It's like, I don't know. Did they have like a double jeopardy law in Rome where it's like, look, you crucify me, bitch. What now? Like, I'm back. What's that? What's up? Right? It's like, what are they going to do? Crucify him again? He's like, oh, you're going to do like kill me twice? It's like, I don't know. It's just kind of silly. It's like, oh, well, what if, like, he resurrected from the fucking dead? You're convinced that he is God. And you're like, oh, well, what if the Romans, like, what if the Jewish leaders, what if the elders find him? It's like, what if they do? Just walk around like, oh, throwing fireballs and shit, like floating up off the ground, throwing lightning, be like, look at me, bitch, and turning people into like pillars of salt and stuff. Don't fuck with God. No, instead it's like, no, he's all meek and he's hiding out inside of these like people's houses and stuff because, you know, if the authorities find him, then he's just going to get beat up and crucified again. Why does he go from being this whole bullshit, like, look, he's so meek and feeble and crucifying, then like, but no, then, you know, Jesus is going to come back to earth with a rain of fire and like 2 AK-47s. That's like what Christian, like conservative ideology has like morphed into modern day. And they constantly do this where they have like this contradiction, like here's hippie happy Jesus. Then here's like, you know, ass kickery, like, you know, fireball throwing Jesus over here. It's like, can y'all make up your mind on who this guy is? Like, otherwise it seems like he's just kind of psychotic.
Appeared among them in the locked house and said, "Peace to you." The disciples were overjoyed to see Jesus with their own eyes. After Jesus had shown them the wounds in his hands and his side.
Why couldn't he heal that shit? So he healed everything else, but he couldn't heal the fucking wounds in his hands. Like, as if it's like, oh, well, we can't confirm that you are who you say you are unless you have like 2 fucking holes in your hands. It's like, first of all, they would have been driven through the wrist bones, not through the fucking hand. You just like ripped off the cross and like just, you know. It would have been pretty gruesome. But I'm just saying, this is like a really dumb part of the story as well. It's like, look at the holes in my hands. Like, as if my loved ones are like, whenever they see me, they're like, Zoe, we don't, is that you? And I'm like, yes. And I'm like, is it dark? Like, are you having trouble seeing? Like, what's wrong with your eyes? And like, no, it's perfect fine. I can see. I just, let me see your hands. I gotta like see your palms to make sure that, you know, the creases and stuff are there. Otherwise, I won't be able to tell who you are. That's the only way this shit makes sense. Like, oh, is it really you and not just some imposter? Well, I mean, like, if the holes are the only things that can convince you, what if you got an imposter and fucking drove spikes to his hands or something, and then, like, you know, they healed up or whatever. Then he's like, look, it is me, the Christ. And they're like, oh, no, it can't really be you. Then he's like, look, holes. And he's like, oh, it's really God. It's like, no, it's just some maimed dude. I mean, like, if that's really the only thing that convinces them, I'm calling horseshit.
He told the disciples that they would continue his mission, going throughout the world and preaching God's love.
Why couldn't he do it? This drives me crazy about this religion, because Jesus never wrote a fucking book. There's no gospel of Jesus. I'm like, well, God's in the whole book, and it's like, it's the red letter and shit like that. That's not what I'm talking about. He didn't write anything himself. It's just these fucking disciples following around, be like, oh, this really happened. Trust us, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's like, no, where are his letters? Where's the divine, like, revelation straight from him? Like, why didn't he write anything? Why didn't he continue going around Rome, like, teaching and preaching and become like, he should have, like, expounded a philosophy, an actual fucking philosophy that was like the most mind-blowing to mankind, and like there would never be anything that would like trump it or anything else. And I know that conservatives are gonna say, oh, well, he did that by giving us Christianity. It's not what the fuck I'm talking about. I mean, like, Christians shouldn't have to fall back on arguments like, well, mathematics, you know, demonstrates God, or, you know, some kind of cosmological argument to like, well, there must have been a first cause or contingency where there must have been a prime mover to start and move stuff. Like, Christ should have continued teaching himself. And if he had actually existed and he actually was God and he just like eternally like kept on fucking living, and throughout all these different ages and all these different cultures, we have people reporting this exact same figure walking around, and statues of him are built everywhere across like the ancient ages and stuff all the way up until now. And it's like, yeah, he still like lives in some fucking like, I don't know, necropolis out in Greece somewhere. And you can go and he can, you know, like reveal to you right now and show you his hands with the holes and stuff like, nope, didn't happen. Just came back, like fucking resurrected, and then all of a sudden is just gone. He shows himself a couple of times, does a few like, you know, like he appears as like an apparition so that Paul fucking, you know, changes his ways or whatever. And that's it. Then he's gone. Like, he just disappears. It's so fucking like you really, why would I believe this? How is this convincing to anyone? Just because some people like wrote in a fucking book? I mean, like, there's so many like comic books and everything else that detail characters' lives that go into more detail than this, because Christ never even like well, according to the Synoptic Gospels, he never had like children, never got married. And it's like, he's the perfect man. I thought y'all conservative, perfect men like get married to women and have children and shit. You're not just like bachelors your whole lives. All right. All right. So that's fucking it. So that's that fucking video. That's the fucking empty tomb bullshit shared to children. This crap is being used to indoctrinate children. This is absolutely ridiculous. But the real thing to be concerned about is LGBT ideology. The real thing to be concerned about is telling people that it's okay to just be yourself, that it's okay for you to simply exist. Nope. That's not fucking okay. You have to agree with this horse shit, then not follow, like not express yourself outside of any way that the Bible tells you that you ought to. You have to, walk, talk, and quack the way that we tell you to, when we tell you to, and how we tell you to. That's what conservative Christianity teaches. It does not teach progressive values. It does not teach ideas of like free will and that sort of thing. Instead, it's a like an endless amount of threats that you better obey God, you better do what he tells you to, you better listen to how we interpret it. Otherwise, you might burn in hell. It'd be a real shame if like something happened to that soul of yours. That's how they fucking act about it. Not this fucking like kiddie shit of like, oh, Jesus was just, happy, cool guy, and the Romans were so mean to him or whatever else. It's like, y'all are leaving out so much about the story. And it's like, children are going to read this or watch this, I should say. I grew up reading those little biblical stories for kids where they're like David and Goliath and all that kind of stuff. And it's like they leave out all the threatening shit until you get older, unless you're like in a really like fundamentalist kind of cult. Then, I mean, like you might get that fire and brimstone stuff like real early. And I just don't get why people think like this is a good idea to do to kids. But like I said, fuck it. I just recorded the video twice, so this is the second one for the evening. I hope you liked the video. If you haven't, please fucking like the video. Please subscribe if you haven't. I apologize for being just like all bent out of shape or whatever. It just like, it really sucks when you gotta like reshoot everything. Anyway, I hope you have a nice night, and I will see you in the next video.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face, tell me that you love me, even if it's fake.